Cullen goes live in 2 minutes. Lynn Cullen live in 1 minute. Welcome to Lynn Cullen Live at pghcitypaper.com. Email your questions and comments to Lynn at pghcitypaper.com.
Well, yeah, it's the 14th. It's the 15th of the 4th. The 15th of April. Why does that ring a bell? Oh, yeah. Taxes. Oh, well. Let's not talk about that. Another beautiful day. Gosh, we're going to get spoiled next week. So, we got an hour to talk. Excuse me. I really need to start this show like bang, just hit the ground running instead of this babbling about what day it is and what the meteorological conditions are. But I could take a call. Let's. Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi. Can I talk to Lynn?
This is Lynn.
Oh, hi. This is Dan from Squirrel Hill. Remember me?
Yeah, Dan, but we got a bad connection.
Oh, no.
I got a big buzz.
You know what? Other people have said that, too.
I can't. If other people said it too, you know. Yeah, okay, bye.
Hope it'll work. Bye.
Oh, dear.
Yeah, that's not us.
It's him. Okay. That's an eager gentleman who just emailed me, so I know who that is, who's written a book about Barack Obama and wants you to buy it. There he comes again. Oh, dear. No, it's no better.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
Did you get my email, though?
I did.
Okay, then you just talk about it, okay?
All right,
Okay,
I just did.
bye.
Bye. Wrote a book about Barack Obama. It cost 99 cents. I don't know what the title is. I don't know anything. He used to call my show a million years ago Dan from Squirrel Hill. Old timers will remember Dan from Squirrel Hill. He's an unapologetic libertarian is what he is. So I can't imagine what that book about Barack Obama is going to be like. All right, Dan, get a better phone. So, where was I? You know what I did last night? I watched. Did you watch? I feel like such a good citizen. I've never watched more damn debates in my life. But I have to tell you, the debates have been interesting. The debates have been interesting. And last night, whoa-wee, last night's debate between Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders was, while still head and shoulders above in terms of content and the fact that it was actual policy being discussed generally, head and shoulders about anything that the Republicans have treated us to in their many debates. However, this one had a little bit of the dangerous kind of out-of-control atmospherics that have attended many of the Republican debates. For one thing, the audience seemed less in control. The audience seemed that it might possibly erupt, much like a Trump audience. And there was a lot of booing, there was a few people who screamed things out, and it was clear this was coming from supporters of both candidates. But I was saddened to see it myself, because one of the things that the Democrats have going for them is that they are at least a party of grown-ups and people who engage in rational argument. And there's nothing wrong with argument, rational argument over how best to make this country better. I'll tell you another thing. These two, Sanders and Clinton, are just head and shoulders. Why do I keep saying head and shoulders? Do I need to wash my hair? Head and shoulders. And I don't have dandruff. I don't know why I said that. Head and shoulders above the Republican candidates. But, God, there was a, to me, see, I don't like people fighting. And to me, there was it made me unhappy and it made me uncomfortable. And I found myself, after about an hour of it, not liking Bernie as much as I have. And I tried to think later, why am I reacting to him like this? Because I have said I'm voting for him in the primary. I like what he says. I like what he is bringing to the national table. I like that these things that he's saying that you've only heard in more left circles is out there on national center stage. I love it. And opportunity to educate a lot more Americans. So I do so appreciate him. But there was something last night where I've seen people writing today that he seemed so angry when he has in the past seemed just like a passionate old uncle of yours. And gone was that, guy, the cozy sort of good old uncle, and was an angry guy. And I don't know. I don't think he helped himself last night, although he sure did lay it out. He laid it out. I also thought more than once that Bernie and Trump truly do share. I mean, they're riding the same kind of wave. They are in some respects the same. I should be careful here, obviously. They both make broad statements, and when pushed, don't seem to have a lot of substantive policy, the boring, pragmatic stuff of governance behind them. I find Bernie's criticisms of our country to be spot on. I've been saying much the same thing he's saying for decades myself. But what he's missing is a sense that if we were to elect him, that he could do anything about it. And that is Trumpian in that way. I'll bring the steel. I'm bringing coal back. I'll bring Joe Paterno back, for God's sake. I'll bring them all back. You say things. We were talking yesterday, were we not? One of the emailers said she thought it was sort of like faith, that people who support Trump or support Bernie, because I think it's the same kind of thing, love what they're saying. They're speaking to their hearts and their heads a bit, yeah. And so they suspend disbelief of how they can implement what they're saying. Because rationally, if you look, generally speaking, they can't. And so then it starts seeming like, okay, so a vote for Sanders is a vote with your... Yes, thank God someone's finally calling a spade a spade. Someone is finally saying, look at this. Look at what they've been doing to us. Look at how the government is in their pocket. Look at all of that. And you want to rise up and scream, yes. And then there's... And people who are for Bernie don't like to hear this word. Pragmatism. There is in place in this entire world a structure of sorts in which things get done. For ill, which is often the case, or for good. And no one coming in as the president, especially somebody coming from out like a Trump or a Sanders, coming into what essentially is a totally hostile environment, a structure that has in fact supported and done the bidding of the establishment they decry. That structure doesn't go away with an election. Someone even trying to work within the structure, like Barack Obama, finds himself stymied at almost every turn, right? So I just felt watching last night that Bernie looked to me like somebody who, yes, I love what you're saying. It is true, it is true, it is true. But it started sounding like Johnny One Note, sort of Trumpish. I've heard this before. As soon as things go off on a slightly different tangent, he seems stymied. I mean, there was one question that really pointed this out, and it was a damn good question. There were some good questions last night, by the way. The question was, you have repeatedly said that Hillary Clinton, has taken all this money from Wall Street, and that then means she's in their pockets, and it's a quid pro quo. So tell us one instance. They only ask for one. Give us one instance where you can show that she did Wall Street's bidding at the expense of her constituents. There's something I'm paraphrasing. He didn't have a thing. So when you make that like a centerpiece of your attack on your opponent, and you can't back it, Even though it seems like, yeah, I've said that a million times, you take money from these people, you owe them. But then you have to be able to show it. And that troubles me about Bernie. He couldn't. I'll break up the big banks, he says. And then when asked how, he doesn't really know. He has these things that he says, and I support the truth of them. But when it comes then to the nitty-gritty of, okay, well, if you're the president, what are you going to do? Presidents can't break up the big banks like that. Presidents can't do like what Trump says he'll do. This is where the two, but I guess politicians are forever promising things that they know damn well they can't deliver. The thing about Hillary, looking at her last night, she really is one astonishingly impressive human being. Maybe you don't want to cuddle with her. Maybe ain't quite, maybe she's got some little defects. Who the hell doesn't? Can you imagine if any of us lived our lives under the magnifying glass that woman has? How many of us would look like really good? I don't think anybody would. She is so head and shoulders. She is so head and shoulders above in terms of just sheer competence, experience, know-how, knowledge of how things work than anyone running. Any. There's no one even close. And I think the debate last night underscored that. So anyway, Bernie, guess where he is right now? He's in Rome. He already landed. Can you imagine the pace that these people are? Can you imagine? I watched that debate last night and couldn't even make it through to the end because I was tired and needed to go to bed. He's older than me. She's older than me. And they just keep going. I can no more imagine doing a debate like that with the stakes that high and then immediately getting on an airplane, flying off to Rome, getting off the airplane, which he has already done, and having to be sharp. Wow. That's an impressive old fart, I'll tell you that. So, it's a hell of a race. And I think it's a big mistake for him to have left the country right now. Because I think given his performance last night, which was a barn burner, it put me off, but I think it might have lit up the passions of a lot of other people who maybe never bothered to listen to him. I think he might, he could be, since he comes from behind, he closes, he's a good closer. I think he would have a shot at doing the unthinkable and winning the New York primary on Tuesday. But he has absented himself from the field for the weekend prior to the vote, which strikes me as incredible. If he were to win, then the Democratic Party has as much of a problem as the Republicans. And then there's a clear problem with Hillary as a candidate. I've said a million times, one of the few things I retained from my college education is the professor, when I was a freshman, who told us that the talents and qualities required to win an election have nothing whatsoever to do with the talent and qualities required to govern. Not a thing. In fact, in some respects, they're almost sort of opposites. And so a lot of people who would be so good in a position but don't have the charisma or the glad-handing skills or whatever to win people's hearts and consequently their votes, they never get to the position that they could excel at. And we, the people, often vote for the wrong person simply because we fall for them. You know, it's like a lot of people, men and women, who are always falling for the wrong type, right? And they repeat and repeat the mistake. Can't help it. It's just who I'm attracted to. I know it's wrong, but I can't help it. And we do that often with our votes. We give them to people who wow us, but who are not going to be great at the job we're putting them in. And that's just the way it is. Speaking again of a little bit of politics, and then I don't want it anymore. John Kasich. So campaigning in New York, you have to make all these obligatory stops. Man, you got to eat more food you never ate in your life. I can't even imagine how these people do it. So you might have seen the picture of Kasich uncomfortably, I don't know, eating matzah or gefilte fish or something. Cruz, too, making matzah. I mean, come on. See, but Jews are a big constituency in New York, so you got to make nice to them Jews. And sometimes there is such a clear discomfort level. It's just visual. Kasich is the one. Kasich has trouble around Jews for some reason. He's the one, isn't he, who I just couldn't believe my ears. I think he's the one who long ago, early in the race, appearing before some Jewish Republican organization, said, "My mother always told me that if you want to make a really good friend, you go find a Jew." Something like that. It was something like that. And it was like, what? I mean, it was like cringifying. It was like, what? It was something. I might have got it sort of wrong, but that's the gist. It was so patronizing and it was just totally icky. So anyway, Charlie Pierce is a guy I like to read. He writes for Esquire, and he's very smart. And he wrote this the other day. On behalf of every single Christian, all the way back to James the Just, I would like to apologize to our Jewish brothers and sisters on behalf of John Kasich, who knows not what he does, and in a big way, too. So here is what he's talking about. So after Kasich did the obligatory tour of the matzah bakery, and then went on to the obligatory tour of the Jewish bookstore in Brooklyn, this is all on Tuesday, he found himself on the street in New York, surrounded by reporters, And he started, because he learned a few things in the matzah factory and in the Jewish bookstore. He's talking to Jews. He knows Passover's coming up, by the way, in a week, Friday. And he says this about the importance of Passover. It's a wonderful, wonderful holiday for our friends in the Jewish community. The Passover, he says. Right there, I sort of went like, what? First of all, nobody says the Passover. Okay, fine. That's just a little bit of a tip. What? The Passover? Sort of like the rapture. No, it's Passover. That's all. It's Passover. It's not the Christmas, is it? It's not the Easter. It's also not the Passover. But, he ain't a Jew. You give the guy a break. He goes on. The great link, says Kasich, between the blood that was put on the lampposts, the blood of the Lamb, because Jesus Christ is known as the Lamb of God. It's his blood. What? Excuse me. What? You started with, it's a wonderful, wonderful holiday for our friends in the Jewish community, the Passover, and about 6 words later, you're on to Jesus Christ's blood? What? Excuse me. There are so many faux pas in this, we can't even begin to enunciate. Just sort of biblical history. How did Jesus have anything to do with Passover? Jesus was 1,000 years, he wasn't even a twinkle in God's eye yet. He was, what do you mean? And then he says the great link between the blood that was put above the lampposts. What Charlie Pierce writes is lampposts. There are no lampposts in the Passover story. In fact, there's no lampposts in Egypt. In what? In Pharaoh's Egypt? Do they have lampposts? I don't think so. There weren't even lampposts in the Ten Commandments. There weren't lampposts in that. What? What he meant was doorposts. And for those who don't know, you don't know your Bible? Exodus. The Jews were told, smear a little blood on the doorpost of your house. And that way, this is what God told Moses to tell the Jews. And that way, because I'm about to do some really nasty stuff. That Old Testament God, was he a son of a bitch? I gotta tell you, woo-wee. What a murderous spy. Jeez. I'm gonna... all right, you Jews, because I'm doing this for you right now. You stick some blood there on the doorpost. And then when I send my angel of death, he's gonna... Oh, I won't kill anyone in there. Those must be Jews. Nope, no blood. I'm killing their firstborn. I'm slaying them dead. So it was the way the Jewish firstborns weren't killed. That was the sign that God asked the Jews to put on their hymn. So, he goes from that blood, and 4 words later is to Jesus Christ. And I got to tell you, here's where Charlie Pierce is right, but it gets into a whole other thing. He says, worse, never, ever talk about blood while discussing Judaism's connection to Christianity. Never do it. There is something that Jews know well. It's called blood libel. Have you heard of the term? Blood libel. Blood libel, the blood libel, is responsible probably for the death of more Jews than Hitler managed. Blood libel is this idea, not a fact, it's a total made-up story about how when Passover comes, you know what Jews do? They find little Christian babies and they kill them and they drain their blood to make matzah. Now understand, Passover and Easter, cheek to jowl, they're coming right together. Imagine, Good Friday, Christians are told the Jews killed your Lord. And then Jews start celebrating this holiday right after. And of course, you know, the story grew that, you know what they're doing now? They're still killing our kids, and they're making that disgusting matzah crap they eat. They're doing it with Christian little baby Christian blood. People bought it. Jews were massacred left and right for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. The blood libel. And Kasich comes out of a matzah factory in Brooklyn and jumps right into blood and Jesus. I gotta tell you, that ain't gonna go over too well, John. Pierce writes, there lies far too much bloody history and way too much history there. This is not the way you campaign in New York, Bubba. God almighty. Passover, by the way, my favorite holiday. And I won't be here next Friday because I'll be on my way to Susan's in Chicago to kill some Christian babies and make matzah. Okay? She's going to be scouting out where she's looking for plump. Usually under 2 is best, you know. You know, when Jews celebrate Passover, at the Seder is the name for the dinner, the ritual feast, where we tell the whole story. When we get to those horrific 10 plagues, the delight of all Jewish children, because you get to say, you enumerate them, and you get to say things like locusts, lice, boils. There's everything there but pus. It's wondrous. But as you enunciate all of these horrors that God put upon the Egyptians, trying to get them to let the Jews go, you do not take any delight in the Egyptian suffering. You do not. It is appalling what God wrought there. And so, as you're doing these plagues, frogs, pff, I'm trying to remember them all now. Lice. Well, that's the last. The biggie. And what you do is you take your wine glass, and you can dip your finger or you can take a spoon, but for each one, you take some wine out of your glass and drop it onto a saucer. You ain't gonna drink it. So not only don't you take delight, but you deprive yourself of a measure of delight by for each one. Frogs, lice, hail, locusts. Can't remember them all. But the biggie is the last one. And that's where Kasich got himself in trouble. The last one is, and it always is so appalling. The last one is slaying of the firstborn. And I say you take a whole bunch out for that and drop it down. Right. Oh. I don't know. So, let's see what we got here. Kasich. Dear Lynn, I simply can't stop laughing. You're laughing about slaying of the firstborn? You're laughing about Christian babies being hung by their plump little toes so the blood drains nicely out of their severed heads? What are you talking about? You're laughing. Disgusting. At every level of the Passover quote is hilarious. Not just the Jewish clusterfuck, but the whole muckle-brained quote. Kasich is a rotten man. I don't know about that. He can be unintentionally funny, though. That's from Kathleen. Here's from Danny. The guy who called in wanting you to buy his book. I wanted to give my book away for free, but Amazon made me charge 99 cents. I was hoping that you would ask people to read the free preview. Well, what the hell is the name of the book? I don't know what they're... You never told me the name of the book. Don't you need the name of the book? If you're trying to sell something, Nanny, I think you need the name. I was hoping you would ask people to read the free preview, which can be seen by clicking on the words "Look Inside" on the cover of the book. Oh, man, you need a PR guy. You need Marketing 101. You never told us the title of the book. If you send it to me, I will let people know. Maybe you could read some of the free on the air, and everyone could laugh at how bad a writer I am. Well, okay, I'll take the matter under advisement. Chuck writes, Bernie and the Pope sounds like a great title for a book, doesn't it? Well, they're on the same page on an awful lot of issues. They truly are. Regardless, I saw an article in the New York Times that Bernie Sanders is headed for the Vatican today. He's there already. It's amazing. And here's a quote from the story. Mr. Sanders was scheduled to fly to Rome to address the Pontifical Academy of Social Sciences, in effect the Vatican's in-house think tank on social, economic, and environmental issues. Quote, we invited the candidate who cites the Pope the most in his campaign. And that happens to be Senator Bernie Sanders, the only Jew running. He didn't say that, the only Jew. I guess I'm sort of surprised, says Chuck, that he's doing this given the New York primary. Chuck, are you listening? I just said all this. Maybe you're not listening. You're just typing. Given the New York primary is only a few days away, could this be a strategic move on his part to win over Catholics? It might be, but I think it is a stupid move. Coming off his, for what Bernie supporters would say was a wonderful showing last night, I thought it was too angry and too sort of disrespectful of Hillary. You might not like her, but you can't brush her aside. I'm sorry. Yeah, I think it's a tactical error. Okay. What? Bill Nye and Sarah Palin are at it. Okay. Well, God let him. I think he legitimizes her by going anywhere near her. I don't know. I don't know. Okay, enough of that. Two obituaries today. Lovely day. Do you know, there's always sort of a disconnect for me when I'm looking at the obits, because what you're confronted with are a lot of smiling faces. Right? And essentially the headline over each smiling face could be, "I'm dead." I mean, it seems if you were looking for an obit picture, you'd want it to be sort of like, no. I mean, my mom is always looking for her obit picture. Every time she sees a good picture of herself, she says, "That would be good." But there is some, I understand. I mean, here's this wonderful person that was on this earth with us all. But there is, it always strikes me as a bizarre that, I'm looking at all these happy people and they're only in the paper because they're dead. So anyway, obits. 2 men, close to the same age. One used his life in a way that I find despicable. The other used his life in a way that is truly admirable. Let's start with admirable first. This is a name many of you will know, and I know because he's a Pittsburgher. And his name is Dr. Peter Janetta. I've seen that name many times in the paper because I live here and I read the paper. I never met the man. I saw his obit in the Post-Gazette yesterday. I read it sort of, but it didn't pull me in. I was surprised to see a much larger obit for Dr. Janetta in the New York Times today. And that brings up this whole issue of, in your own hometown, you are rarely, it's weird how the New York Times gave this guy this huge obit, much bigger than anything the PG did, and the guy was here. That always bothers me. So anyway, I learned more about a fellow Pittsburgher, Dr. Janetta, from the New York Times today than I did from the local paper, and that happens all too much. It says here he was considered one of the foremost neurosurgeons in the world. In the world. As a very young doctor, he found the way surgically to stop apparently the most horrific pain that a person can feel. Many people say that it is the worst pain in the world. It's in your face. It's a kind of neuralgia, trigeminal neuralgia, and that people who suffer from it often committed suicide. Cannot stand the pain. As a resident, a young doctor, not quite fully fledged, Janetta was dissecting the nerve area where this, and he sees something. He sees a he sees a little tiny blood vessel, and it's just impinging on a nerve a little bit. And he thought to himself, geez, I wonder if this could be what's causing that horror. This little blood vessel, not a nerve. It's a blood vessel? Nobody would listen to him. First of all, he was too young to be listened to. Second of all, nobody thought a blood vessel had anything to do with this horror. But he could not be dissuaded, and he figured, I'm going to use a microscope, a surgical microscope. I'm going to go in there. I'm going to remove this little vein. And he developed an entire delicate procedure to do it. And the first person he did it on, 100% cured. Went from a life of hell to fine. It took over a decade for the medical establishment to acknowledge that Peter Janetta had, in fact, found the cure. This treatment is now standard. It results in total relief of this horror of pain for 90% of all people who undergo the procedure. When you think of how many people's lives were saved by him, it's pretty amazing. He trained hundreds of surgeons around the world, and what he discovered has been used to treat a range of other conditions, from tinnitus to vertigo to spasms. Anyway, he served as Pennsylvania Secretary of Health for 2 years. He taught at University of Pittsburgh, and in 2000 he joined the staff of Allegheny General over here, which is where he was upon his death. It was a fall that killed him, unfortunately. I think he was at work when it happened. So there you have it. Dr. Peter Janetta, world's great neurosurgeon, our neighbor, and I had to read it in an out-of-town newspaper. Okay, the other guy who died, who we can say toodaloo and good riddance to, is a guy named Joe Britt. He was a prosecutor in North Carolina, and he is proud to have held the Guinness Book of World Records for the deadliest prosecutor in the world. He managed to prosecute, convict, and send off to death row more humans than any other prosecutor, apparently. In fact, he did 24 death sentences in 28 months at one point. He was just, you appeared before this guy, you're dead. You're a dead man. However, the good news is appeals court rulings led to many sentences being reduced. And in fact, some suspects that he not only got convicted but sentenced to death were later exonerated. Here's what he said about those exonerations. There's no doubt in my mind they're not innocent, and they're not entitled to a pardon, and they're not entitled to any compensation. Joe Britt, responsible for the deaths, and who knows, or it's two men, sort of the same age, different roads, taken. Okay, my book is called 1202. Good God, no wonder you didn't tell me what the hell the book was called. Wait a minute. My book is called 1,202 well-sourced examples of Barack Obama's lying, law-breaking, corruption, cronyism, hypocrisy, waste, etc. And you want me to help sell this book for you? You're kidding me, right? There's no one in that. Marketing. First you tell the name of the book, and then you go to an audience, like Fox News, that would read this. There's no one here reading this. Okay. All right. So not that I'm a Trump lover and not that I'm a Corey Lewandowski, his campaign manager lover, but I feel vindicated in that the authorities have decided they will not prosecute Corey Lewandowski for assault. Because as I have said, I was dumbstruck that could be a charge for the action I saw on the video. And so that is what the prosecutor said too. He said, hey, we have a burden of proving a case beyond a reasonable doubt. And the prosecutor's looking at the tape and he said, ain't no way I'm winning that case. I mean, you could have people like me on the jury. A feminist, old kind, an old feminist, Trump hater, and I would have found Lewandowski innocent. I don't think you're going to win that case. Okay, so here's a little thing I came across. And this is sort of funny. This is Turnaround. The guy who wrote it doesn't think it's funny. I think it's funny. And there's a lot of missing facts here that I'm not going to be able to satisfy your curiosity about. However, let me tell this story with a few holes in it. This has to do with our next-door neighbor, Ohio, and specifically the University of Ohio State. The Ohio State. A university which I hate, but I have no reason to hate it other than who started that hate with Ohio State? Oh, yeah, Woody Hayes, old football coach. I just hate him. So anyway, apparently some students at Ohio State last week were pissed off about something or other and had started a sit-in inside a university building and were not moving. They were saying, we are staying here till we get what we want, and blah, blah, blah. As somebody who, by the way, participated in a university sit-in myself as a freshman in 1966, I have nothing against students doing protests and sit-ins. But I don't know what the sit-in was about, so I can't help you there. But what's interesting is how the administration handled it. I have reported to you that when students do these things now and walk on the administration building and demand this, these administrations, the presidents are caving left and right. I mean, the one that just freaked me out is that somebody had put Trump for president or something on the sidewalks of, what university was it? Emory, I think. I don't remember what that was. And students actually marched on the administration building saying that they felt unsafe. That this word was on the sidewalk. I mean, it's absurdities like that just make you... And the university caved. They caved. They said, well, we will try to find the offender and they will be dealt with. So... Here, though, is what these protesters faced. The guy from the university said, among other things, I'm not going to read the whole thing he said, but he said this. I want you to understand he said to all the students, that you are violating the student code of conduct. But this is your university, and we want to have dialogue with you. We want the dialogue to extend beyond tonight, but if you refuse to leave, then you will be charged with a student code of conduct violation. And he also told them that they would also be arrested at some point. If they wouldn't leave voluntarily, the police would come and carry them out. And if they wanted to be arrested, we'll be glad to arrest you, but because you are right now violating the student code of conduct. And then he did this. I want you to understand why we would do something like this. The consensus, you see, of the university leaders is that the people who work in this building have a right to be protected also. They come to work around 7 o'clock in the morning. Do you remember when you all made that rush down there and were chanting to the folks inside the doors a minute ago? You scared those people. The people in this building have a right to a safe environment and to an environment where their jobs will not be interrupted. So what he was saying to them is he was turning on them the very arguments that they've been using. He was saying, our employees in there don't feel safe with you screaming out here and taking over their space. And they deserve a safe place every bit as much as you do. And what you're doing right now to them could be... So all of this stuff that students have come up with, the safe place, the microaggressions, and this needs to be dealt with. Here's what invariably always happens. That can be turned right around and used on them. Brilliant on the part of the university. Brilliant. And the guy who's writing this is appalled because he says, I'll tell you what, I've never seen this before, a university appealing to the safety and fear of staff in this way. But I suspect it's going to be used again and again against protesters in the future. Insofar as campus concepts like safe spaces, microaggressions, claims of trauma over minor altercations spread from activist culture to campus culture, there ain't no keeping it from getting into the administration's culture as well, and they will make use of that. It's a little twist. Somebody's got another obit. Henri. Ray Tomlinson, the computer programmer who invented modern email. Apparent heart attack. He made the invention in 1971 as an engineer for a firm in Boston. He implemented the email system on ARPANET, which was the precursor of the internet. He came up with a code that allowed a user of one computer to send a message to the user of another computer. He has said that his first few messages for testing were just gibberish. He also came up with the @ sign as a way to separate the user from his machine. And obviously that is something we still use today. He is a member of the Internet Hall of Fame. Worthy of note. Ray Tomlinson. Change the way we communicate with each other. All right. Anybody else on anything? I have two things here, and they're both horrible. I mean, like sad, and I just don't even want to bring them up now because it's too beautiful a day. So maybe we should just call it a day. I'm not going to bring them up. You know, one's about corporations and cheating on their taxes, and the other's about suicide. We don't want to end on either of those, do we? Is there anything else? Anything else? I'm thinking. I'm coming up empty. I am. So, I wish you all a wonderful spring weekend. Spill out into the loveliness of nature. Enjoy. Talk to you Monday.
Lynn Cullen Live, Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. and archived at pghcitypaper.com. The opinions expressed on Lynn Cullen Live are those of the host and do not necessarily reflect the viewpoints of Pittsburgh City Paper, Steel City Media, and its advertisers.